Yes, it's okay, Chief? Okay, we've been waiting for people to recheck in so that we know who registered voters of Ashfield are. So people have been checking in again. Can I have quiet in the house, please? Quiet in the house, please. Thank you. Before I call the meeting to order, I got this note, a little bit distressing, when I read the list of people who have passed away since our last meeting. Apparently 2 weeks ago, Virginia Page passed away. Sorry, and I didn't read her name, and feel badly about it, but we didn't have her on the list because she died recently. So let's keep her in our thoughts and thank her for her contributions to this community. Mary Lake, is there anybody else checking in?
No, I left my papers in my bag.
Okay, all right, very good. So I will call this meeting to order now. Thank you all for coming back on this beautiful day. We have important stuff to get to, and so we're on Article 30, the Park Grant Authorization, Park PARC. Do I hear a motion with respect to Article 30?
Mr. Moderator,
Mr. Goodgen.
I move the Town of Ashfield vote to transfer and appropriate free cash the sum of $96,100 and to authorize the Select Board to use $58,900 of American Rescue Plan Act funds for a total of $155,000 to restore the tennis courts and add pickleball courts at the Belding Memorial Park at 89 Buckland Road. And to authorize the Select Board to apply for, on behalf of the Town of Ashfield, any and all grants under the Parkland Acquisitions and Renovations for Communities Grant Program, and to further authorize the Select Board to enter into any and all agreements and execute all of the documents as necessary on behalf of the town to effectuate said project or receive said grants.
Okay, if Mr. Goodgen failed to read any citations, they are included in your motion, correct?
Yes.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Carter seconds. Please explain to us what we're talking about here, Mr. Goodgen.
We have a member from the Park Commission.
Judy Howe, Watson Spruce Corner Road, and Chair of the Park Commission.
Ms. Howe, make sure you have that microphone right up there.
As you all know, our tennis courts are in terrible shape. One side is not even operable, the other side is really safe. In 2016, when I first became chair, the commission invited the original construction company to come down and look at what we had at that time. He said in order to repair the cracks at that time, it would cost about $6,000, and he did not recommend any crack repair in New England because it doesn't even last one winter. He also made some other recommendations that the tennis courts needed more exposure to the sun so they would dry out faster, and so we took down some trees to do that, and then proceeded to figure out what we were going to do in the long term. So this Park PARC grant is available to towns in the Commonwealth. This is a reimbursement grant, so we pay out the money, they reimburse us at the end. So I reached out again to the company, and they upgraded the actual cost that it would take to replace the surface at a wheelchair handicap ramp and the backboard, and add lines for both tennis courts and pickleball, the newest rage in the U.S. So the bid came in, well, the estimate came in somewhere between $145,000 and $155,000. Ashfield is eligible to receive 62% from the grant, and then the town has to come up with the rest. So Tom Carter and I met at the tennis courts. He says, let's do this. So that is why it's on the warrant. It needs your approval before we can even apply. Do I have any questions?
I'll take care of that, Ms. Howard, but you should stand there in case they're directed at you. Sir, please come up to the microphone. It says question, yes, line up for the microphone, state your name.
Did you get more than one bid on Christopher
No,
Payne?
this is an estimate. It has to go out to bid if we get your approval to apply. Yeah.
19 Briarhill Road, did the estimate include handicap access?
That's what I just said. It does. Yes, it does. Yep.
Other questions, comments, discussion? Hang on. Any other questions, comments, discussion? Ready to vote? All those in favor of authorizing Ashfield's contribution, in addition to the park grant, to restore our tennis courts and put in a pickleball court and make them handicap accessible. Say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstention? That passes unanimously. Article 31, is there a motion?
Mr. Moderator,
Mr. Carter.
Mr. Moderator, I move that the town vote to accept the provisions of Mass General Law, Chapter 64G, Section 3A, and impose a local excise tax upon the transfer of occupancy of any room or rooms in a bed and breakfast establishment, hotel, lodging house, short-term rental, or motel located within the town at a rate of 6%. Said excise tax to take effect on the first day of the calendar quarter, commencing at least 30 days after such vote of a town meeting.
Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Olenek, second. Please.
So the explanation on this is towns have the option to assess a short-term tax on rentals up to 6%. And we're one of the last towns to do this. In Buckland, which has a similar number of units, they raised approximately $20,000 in additional revenues last year. That doesn't mean that we will be, but it'll at least put us in the running. I mean, even when we're putting the budget together, even half or 3/4 of that is significant to meet some of our expenses.
Thank you. This is recommended by the Finance Committee as well. So please, if you have a comment or question, line up at the microphone, separate yourself about 6 feet, speak directly into the microphone, say your name and where you live.
Richard Carroll, Main Street. Can you just define those categories for us, please? Can you define the categories? I think there's 4.
Right, it's hotels, which we don't seem to have any yet, a lodging house, a short-term rental or motel located within the town. What we're really focusing on here are Airbnbs.
So what's the definition of a lodging house?
I guess we'd have to go look at the chapter and verse to think of that, but I think it would be a rental, right? A whole house type of rental. But what we're really focusing on is the Airbnbs.
Kate Caravan, 470 Bug Hill Road. When I sold Bug Hill Farm and built my house next door in 2018, it was meant to be my home for the rest of my life. An aging in place design in the neighborhood and community I love. It was where my family's ashes were scattered. That was my plan. And my daughter died at the beginning of COVID, early April 2020. And that was still my plan until the second year of loss. I found it emotionally impossible, so I moved in with an old friend in New Hampshire, renting my house out temporarily through Airbnb. 2 years later, I'm home again and almost 76. That's okay, but my fixed and only income is still Social Security, which despite its cost of living increases, It appears the only way I will keep my house and continue to live in my community is occasional renting through Airbnb. I object to the proposed 6% tax on this income. I don't know what the solution is for an exception, but perhaps it's second homes that are being used primarily for Airbnbs. I understand the concern about affordable housing, but I would like to keep my house and this may be the only way I can do it.
Mr. Carter, we just, under the statute here, the definitions of those types of lodging that Ms. Carroll asked about.
Right. Ricky, you asked about lodging
I'm
house.
sorry, the microphone.
I'm sorry. Now you want me to be ambidextrous too. Lodging house, a house licensed or required to be licensed under section 23 of chapter 140, that helps us, right? And where lodgings are rented to not less than 4 people who shall not be within the second degree of kindred to the owner or operator of such lodging house. This is right from the statute. Occupancy, the definition of occupancy is the use or possession or the right to use or possess of a room in a bed and breakfast establishment, hotel, lodging house, or motel designed, normally used for sleeping and living purposes for a period of not more than 90 consecutive calendar days.
Those are from the statute.
And it goes on, but you can read it on your device easier than I can read it on his.
Before we hear from anybody else, we heard a comment from somebody who said it would be a financial distress if this went through for the 6%. Does anybody want to address that?
I will.
Okay.
As far as...
You're Ricky Carroll.
Ricky Carroll. As far as I understand, it's not really financial distress because the 6% would be added to whatever fees the person coming in would have to pay. So the owner would get the same amount of money, but plus a 6% that would go to the town on top of that.
Thank you, Ms. Carroll. Judy Howell.
Judy House, Watson's First Quarter Road. Does this include glamping venues, which are several in town? Glamping, you know.
Sure. I mean, people rent out through Airbnb glamping units. So that's short-term rental.
Okay.
Is there anybody who doesn't know what that term means? What is it?
Yeah, it's a combination of the words glamorous and camping. And so you think of like a beautiful white wall tent, and you walk in, there's actually a floor in there, and a real bed. So it's like not roughing it, and there's usually other facilities associated.
Like an outhouse. Very good.
You said it.
Mrs. Cole.
Nina Culver, Bailey Road. I think what needs to be defined is term. The term, what is short term? A month? Weekend? So that's important.
Mr. Carter just read from the statute, not more than 90 consecutive days.
These are all good questions. Further questions, comments, contributions? Yes.
Marky Bellis Road, just a quick question. I built another house on my property close to 20 years ago, and I rented, and they rented for years. Is that, okay. I didn't think so, I just wanted to check.
Ms. Link.
Mary Link, Buckland Road. I have an apartment in my house, which I rent out that way, but the 90 days, so occasionally, I've had people that only lasted a month or 2 months, and then it wasn't the right fit. Would that count, even though the apartment is a long-term rental?
Microphone.
Just curious.
I don't think so. What are the terms of, it has a lease and everything? Usually when people are doing short-term rentals, there's no lease involved.
Anybody else? Are we ready to vote? Okay. All those in favor of Article 31 as moved, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, it passes by majority. Article 32.
Mr. Moderator,
Mr. Olenek.
I move that the town vote to accept Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 39, Section 32D, commonly referred to as the Mullins Rule.
Is that 23D?
Is that what I said?
I think you said 32, but...
23, Listexia.
All right. Okay. Second?
Second.
I just can't see the seconder. You're Mr. Goodgen, second. Go ahead, please.
Okay, so the explanation on this one is for a member of a permit granting authority. So in other words, in our town, that would be Concom, zoning, planning, etc. To vote on granting a permit, they must be present for all sessions of a hearing related to a permit. The Mullins Rule would change that. For large and complicated projects, these permitting hearings can require multiple sessions. Under the current rule, if a member misses even one session, they're not allowed to vote on that permit. In a small town with small boards and commissions, one person on a vote could make it so that the vote could not take place. If adopted, the Mullins Rule would allow the members to miss up to one session and still vote, provided that they certify that they have listened to an audio or video recording or read a transcript of the session and have certified that they've done that. As some permits and variances require a supermajority of the members, an absence can cause significant problems in getting permits passed or voting on permits.
This has been recommended by our Finance Committee. No, it hasn't. They took no vote on this article. I apologize, right? Okay, I apologize for that. So, discussion on the Mullins Rule. Anybody? We ready to vote?
Yes.
Oh, okay. All those in favor of adopting GL 39, Section 23D, the Mullins Rule, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? That passes unanimously, and we're on to Article 33. Is there a motion?
Somebody from the Energy,
Microphone.
somebody from the Energy Committee here? Yes. Great, I can make the motion and then, yeah, I just want to make sure it's good. So, Mr. Moderator.
Yes, Mr. Goodgen.
I move to see if the town will vote to initiate the process to aggregate electrical load pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 164, Section 134, and further to adopt the following resolution, which is presented on the warrant.
Second.
Second. Please explain your design.
So, Alex Osterman, 925 Conway Road, and I'm the chair of the Ashfield Energy Committee. And we propose this, it'll have several benefits for the town. One, the Energy Committee, as many of you know, have been encouraging people to electrify. This has the potential to save us a lot of money on our electric bills. It's not a guarantee, but other towns near us, like Shelburne and Buckland and Conway, who have aggregated, are now paying 9 cents a kilowatt hour to our 22. What would happen if you're voting yes today just gives the select board the ability to take further steps in this process. It does not lock us in. The other reason the Energy Committee is in favor of this is we have the ability to choose where our electricity would come from. So we can craft an aggregation plan with a certain percentage of renewable energy, and we want to see the town increase our percentage of renewable energy in our energy mix. The way this works is that if it's approved and if we move forward, at some point we would all be put onto the aggregation plan. The nice thing is that we retain a lot of choice, so anyone at any time can opt out and stay on utility basic service if we so choose. We also intend to create several levels of aggregation options, so there'll be a standard option. There'll also be a green option we hope that will allow people to choose to maybe have 100% renewables for an extra charge, and a budget option, which would give people the ability to prioritize a lower electricity rate.
It was an excellent explanation, except a lot of people might be wondering, could you define aggregation and why it's called that?
Yeah, it basically means if you look at your Eversource bill, you'll see charges for delivery and for supply. So right now, Eversource delivers our electricity and they're also our supplier. This would allow us to choose another supplier that we would contract with for a period of 1 to 3 years. Again, Eversource we'd still get a bill from Eversource. They would still deliver our electricity. They'd still maintain the lines. A lot of things would not change, but where our electricity comes from would change. And there's also, we have here today Mark Capadonna and Denise Allard from Colonial Power Group. They are an aggregation company that we will likely partner with in this effort. They can also answer any questions that people have if we allow them to speak.
Okay. Nothing from the Finance Committee on this?
No, they voted in favor.
You did? Oh, it's not on my notes. Okay. Okay, is that right, Mr. Minor? Finance Committee is recommending this?
And there it is, right in front of me. Yes, we certainly did.
Okay, there it is. I'm not going to say it was Paul's fault. All right, very good. So, discussion. Yes, please. Again, you don't have to get permission. Just line up at that microphone, speak closely into it, state your name and where you live, and fire away.
Eric Fairby, State Road. Could you give us a little bit of insight on how this affects people who have solar panels and put their power back into the grid?
Good question. So nothing would change. So we have solar panels at our house. So we have net metering. So we pay for the electricity we use. We get paid for the electricity we produce. That calculation would just be made using the aggregation rate as opposed to the utility basic service rate.
Questions, comments, discussion? Open mic.
Mary Lynn, Buckland Road. So this would benefit both all of us as individuals and as a town in terms of the electrical uses of town buildings.
Yes, this would be both for individuals and businesses and town buildings.
Dave Meyer, West Road. Will it cost the town anything if they're going to partner with some affiliate if they have to get paid? So
Good question.
is that, if you take my tax money to pay for Joe, is that going to cost me the 9 cents for electricity, or is there a real benefit of more than a penny? You know?
Yeah, good question. There's a real benefit. So Mark and Denise can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think they're paid by tacking on 0.001. They're nodding. 0.001 cents per kilowatt hour. So, you know, again, it's not a guarantee, the saving electricity. are saving money per kilowatt hour. But if we look at the example of our neighboring towns that are paying 9 cents to our 22, they're still saving a lot of money even though they're paying these guys something.
Any other questions, comments? Ms. Carroll?
Richard Carroll. Can you just, or can they, talk just a tiny bit about how Shelburne actually got their rates down so low? What did they have to do?
Well, so Shelburne, in my understanding, Shelburne went through the same process that we're going through. So I didn't speak to the process. So this vote, it's required that we get all of your approval to proceed any further. Once we get your approval, hopefully, the next step would be to sign a contract with an aggregator like Colonial Power Group. And then they will help us craft an aggregation plan. Then that has to go through to the department, the DOER, and that will take probably 2 years. It's a very lengthy process. At the end of that 2 years, then it's the time that, and during this process, there'll be other times for public input. So once we craft an aggregation plan, there's a requirement that it be put up for public comment. The town is not mandated to go forward. At any point, we could back out. At the very tail end of the process, then we sign a contract with a supplier. So Colonial will get a bid and bring it to us, and then the select board will get to say yay or nay on that bid. I'm not sure I answered your question. Can you see? Yeah.
I guess I'm not.
I'm sorry, Ms. Carroll. Yes, you can follow up, but please come to the mic. Thank you.
So I guess I'm still not clear, like, what would Colonial get paid for us to contract with them, and would that be refundable? Would that be just, they get that for 2 years?
As far as I know, they don't get paid until this actually goes online. They don't get paid a cent until this actually goes online. And they get paid that 0.001 per kilowatt hour if you take all of our electricity use, all town buildings, all businesses, all residences, all put together, and you add up all those kilowatt hours, then they multiply it by 0.001, and that's what they get paid. So if we, stop at any point in the process, they don't. So so I don't know if it would be helpful at some point to have them speak, but I got that right? Yes, okay.
10%.
100%.
Okay, very quick. If we need, we have a speaker who can explain in more detail here. But
very quickly, Bear River Road and on the Energy Committee, just in interest of not setting false expectations, we just heard Thursday night that the group that Buckland is in, that they are going out to bid again. Their contract is up January 1st. So, and they have already accepted a new contract, and what they said was it's less than we're paying now, but it's not 9 cents or anything near it, because it's the beginning of the 3-year cycle. So 9 cents was a good deal 3 years ago, and it's a great deal now. So whatever we accept for a contract, it'll be good. But in 3 years, since if it's a fixed price, it'll look even better if Eversource continues to raise their rates.
I'm pretty sure I know the answer to the question. You said whatever we're paying now, you meant whatever they're paying now.
Whatever everybody's paying Eversource. The basic rate at Eversource is 22 cents now or something. And so their new contract from January might be 20 cents instead of 9.
Got it.
So
Thank you. Helpful. Anybody else? I don't know. You're coming. If you intend to speak, please come to the mic. Ava, if you're already here, please begin to the mic, say your name and where you live.
David Cody, York Hill Road. I'm not sure, but I thought we already had a choice, like individuals, we could choose to get our own electricity where we want. Is that true?
That is true.
So I'm just wondering what this adds to the...
Yeah. What it adds is that most people don't actually do that. So most people just kind of sit on basic service. When I was doing the research on this, there's a lot of those companies that send you mailings. Some of them are really scams. So this is this is something that we are going to, as a town, do the due diligence and go with a reputable supplier. Some of those are great, those individuals. So I know people who are doing that and it's worked out great. Others, they have all kinds of hidden terms that if you back out, you're going to get slammed with a fee or whatever.
Mr. Cranston.
Doug Cranston, 326 Suburban Drive, Ashfield. Anyway, when you get this age, it becomes very difficult to understand just what the hell these people are trying to do. And so they call you 6 times a day on the phone and get you all stirred up and angry and upset. Now, I don't know what company you're dealing with, but I'm hoping that somebody here in town can get something straight so that we can all participate in the same thing and get the best deal there is without having to wait for somebody to give them a call so they can get it cheaper for them. It's very, very disconcerting, and it's just makes you real upset. And I hope whatever you're doing will work to the point that you can be of help to us as a whole.
Thank you, Mr. Cranston. Mr. Cole.
David Cole, Phillips Road. I just wanted to clarify 3 things that I think were a little confusing. One is that I understand if somebody, it was just discussed, some people don't take standard service, they already get service from others. And this program won't change that for you, you stay on it. The other is that this is an opt-out thing. So if you're on standard service right now, your bill will automatically change and you don't have a choice in it, but you can choose later to go onto some other service if you want, or even go back to Eversource's standard rate. The last thing I just think is a little bit of a clarification about if you had solar panels, and that is if you had so many solar panels that you are always having a net positive generation, then you would probably be getting paid less. Is that correct? Because you would only be getting the new negotiated rate instead. So it would seem like somebody who had lots of solar panels would lose out because they would only be getting paid the lower rate. Is that correct?
I don't think so, but that might be something that folks with Colonial should address. I would think that the same change that you get paid for what you produce and you pay less for what you use, so it would even out.
Does anybody know with certainty the answer to Mr. Caraminus' question about those who have certainty? Please.
Not a resident.
Not a resident.
Any objection? We'd love to hear from you. Please state your name.
Mark Kepin from 5 Monroy Lab, Marlboro. So to answer the question, the way it actually works is that you're still in a
Please put the mic up so people can hear you.
You're still in a contract with the utility. So anytime you're using the electricity from the house, no problem. They're always going to pay you the utility rate. I'm just going to use the rate that we're talking about right now. So right now you'd be paying 9 cents whenever you're using the power. But if you were putting it back on the grid, they'd be paying you the 22 cents. Now remember, the knife cuts both ways here. If your rate is 22 cents and Eversource's rate is 9, the exact same thing happens, right? You're going to be paying the 22 and they'll be paying you the 9. So it does not change. When you're using it, you're using power from the aggregation, and the utility is always going to pay you basic service.
Okay, that question's answered. Thank you. Other questions, comments? Are we ready? Oh, I'm sorry, Mrs. Cranston, I didn't see you.
Cynthia Cranston, Dallas Road. I am confused. Right at the moment, PVC Square is putting solar panels on our children's shop and tractor shed. They have equated it so that the electricity, it will balance out so it could be a zero. If you go with that plan, is that going to reduce their amount?
Reduce
Reduce the amount that they get. David Koch, you were talking about solar panels. Is it going to affect them?
Sir?
Mark Capitone from 5 Mount Royal Ave again. So they're going to be paying less because they're going to be using less. All of that is behind the meter. So when you have a solar panel, anything that you're using that day will not go on your meter. It'll just be used. They will be using, if they had, I'm going to make this simple, they used 100 kilowatt hours. Maybe now they're only going to use 25 kilowatt hours. So that times whatever they're using, whether it's on the aggregation or basic service or whatever choice they chose, it would certainly be much less than they otherwise would be paying.
It's clear as mud.
I take another try.
No.
No.
Actually, I'd like to take
So I just want, it's called net metering, right? So you put a solar panel on your roof, that generates electricity. So that electricity that you're generating comes to you free, so to speak. You still have the cost of putting the panel on your roof, but you're not paying for the electricity. That piece of it comes free. So if you use 100 kilowatt hours for the month, and 75 of them were produced by that solar array, you'd only have to be paying 25 kilowatts to the utility or on the aggregation. So it's a net meter, meaning whatever I produced, if I don't use it, say 1 month, I'll give you an example, it's still the same 100, but you produced 125. The utility would then credit your bill for the 25 kilowatts. So whatever you're doing on that net metering should be going against. Now, it gets confusing. Depends whether they own the panel, they rent the panel, how it all works. But what I'm saying in total, if you're using that panel, you're going to have a lower electricity bill than you otherwise would have. Because you're not using electricity from the grid. You're actually using it from your roof.
So for the electricity we're not using, what Mr. Culp was asking is, are we going to be credited for less money because the cost per kilowatt hour is less? And I think you're saying that nets out, it's just you're using less, and then you just have to pay at the lower rate the remaining that you're not using.
So in this scenario that we're talking about here, it would absolutely be, I want to make sure that everyone gets this. Utility is a net zero to the utility. So the Department of Public Utilities says, we want you to make nothing on the solar. So they're always going to credit whatever basic service is. Basic service changes twice a year. Right now it's 22. This summer will probably come down July 1 to something else. But they'll always credit whatever they're charging you for basic service. Completely different than aggregation. That aggregation price is only what you pay for what you're using.
So let's assume that we have enough panels. I think Mr. Karamittis' question was, you have enough panels that you're not paying anything because you're getting a check back because you're adding more to the grid. Yes. Will that check be figured at a lower rate per kilowatt hour than you would have gotten had we not aggregated?
No, it's the exact same payment because they're going to always pay what the utility paid. If you're using kilowatt hours, it could be different. But if it's net, we will not.
Mrs. Cranston, how's the mud doing? It's better.
Thank you for...
No, I needed clarity too. Anybody else have any other questions about this? Yes, please.
As I understand it, we're voting to
Could you say your name and where you're
Ariel Brooks, 305 Main. As I understand it, we're voting to allow an exploration that costs us nothing except the very valuable time of our Energy Commission, much appreciation, and that we would have many opportunities to discuss this later, and also that anybody who didn't want to be part of this could opt out. So, as I understand it, we're just trying to vote on whether we can explore this further at zero cost. Is that accurate?
Yes.
Good point. Any other, don't go far. Any other questions or comments?
Vote.
You're dismissed. Thank you very much. Are we ready to vote? Yeah. Article 3 on energy. Thank you, Mrs. Oxford. And thank you for all the members of the Energy Committee. Are we ready to vote on Article 33? Yes. All those in favor of Article 33 on energy aggregation as moved, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? That passes unanimously. Article 34, Citizens Petition on Excessive Noise Bylaw. Mr. Kohler.
Mr. Moderator.
Mr. Kohler.
To see if the town will vote to amend the excessive noise general bylaw by striking the following language and inserting as written and submitted.
I do not think we have to read the stricken language. Everybody has a copy. Everybody knows what's being proposed to be stricken and what's being proposed to replace it. Is that true? No? Do you have a copy of the warrant? Who said no? I mean, the choice is for Mr. Kohler to read every word of these 5 pages. So who said no and do you not have a copy? Okay. Hi. Could you get a copy so that we're all following? Okay. Is there a second to the motion? Right, it's being moved. This petition bylaw is being moved as written. Right, Mr. Kohler? Okay, would you like to, who was the second?
Thank you.
Good. Please, Mr. Kohler, the floor is yours.
I need a place to set some stuff down. So I'm going to stand here. My apologies for being behind you. Select board. Wow, pretty big crowd. Grew a little bit. Every time I face a crowd like this, I'm forced to face my white male privilege because I would... Here we go. All
right, hey, you're out of order. He has the floor.
Give me a break.
I'm sorry. There's a police officer there who's going to remove anybody who is out of order. Do you understand?
I do. I'm sorry.
We have rules. They're 160 years old or more, and we're going to follow them. And we will have the officer remove anybody who's not compliant. Mr. Kohler, why don't you speak to the motion?
Well, I have a little preface, Mr. Moderator, that's important to it. I can't imagine speaking here if I was black, brown, a woman, or a gender of different orientation. I'm very exposed and I'm very alone. So I put that in front of you and I beg for your indulgence, respectful indulgence, as we exchange ideas. Number 1, for those of you who do not know me, I am very much a part of Ashfield, and Ashfield is very much a part of me. Since I was a little kid in the 4-H club over at Fitzgerald's farm, or when I went through all 6 grades at Mohawk, or in my adolescence as I was several years with Boy Scouts, and several years teaching swimming and such. So I put that before you to let you know that this town means a lot to me personally. And I have my son-in-law on the finance committee, and my daughter on the side, and my grandson beside me. Ashfield is part of Ron Kohler, and I'm part of Ashfield. I've served 2 terms as a select board member. This town is very important to me. And so I say that because what I'm about to say, I need you to believe me. I hope I've established an element of trust. And what I'm going to say is that this amended nuisance noise bylaw was written in an extremely neutral position relative to the Second Amendment. It neither supported it nor opposed it. It's just a nuisance noise bylaw. And lastly, before we jump into this thing, the recorder got it right when they said that it was born out of the forum last autumn, the West Road Forum. It was. And I was distressed with that forum, to be honest with you. A figurative line was drawn down this room. People stood on one side, people stood on the other side. Everyone was experts. The only thing I knew is I didn't know what the hell was going on. I didn't know about the mask law. I didn't know about mask regulations. And it was time that I turned the cover on that. So I did. And what I did was I had 2 public sessions before the petitions were created. Once you create a petition, you're locked in. And then I had 1 more public session after the petition so that we could minimize discussion at this level, because I know everyone wants to get outside. But at the end of that forum, the solution to the problem, whatever the problem was, everyone went there not knowing what was going on. They all learned something. But the solution to the problem was let it lie. Just let it lie. I'm not a person to let anything, leave anything to chance like that. So I was very disturbed. The room was filled with passion, but completely lacking any compassion. So I put this amended noise bylaw, neutral to the Second Amendment, before you today. And if you think it's worthy of your support, I ask you to consider it. Thank you for coming. Should I stay or sit down?
You have the name of the seconder. Okay, very good. There's no position being taken by the Finance Committee on this discussion. Mr. Dufresne. I got it right. I think I called you Delisle last time we were together. I'm sorry about that. Mike Dufresne. Okay.
Hello, Mike Dufresne, Plainfield Road, Ashfield, Mass.
Okay, so you would like to offer this amendment first, because as you know, we don't speech and then amend. We move to amend and then we ask you to explain it.
Yep.
So the amendment, would you like to read the proposed amendment?
Yes. I would like to propose an amendment to Article 34 of the Citizens Petition for Excessive Noise Bylaw. Under page 3, Section D, titled Exemptions, I would like to add the following. Number 12, I would like noise created by the discharge of firearms between the hours of 8 o'clock ante-meridian and 10 o'clock post-meridian AM PM to be exempt from this noise bylaw. This is congruent with Mass General Law. Yes. Exempt between 8 a.m. and 10 p.m.
For those who don't know what anti and post-meridian means, AM and PM. Would you like to speak to why you think this is an appropriate amendment? Now, an amendment, by the way, needs a second. Is there a second?
Second.
Who seconded it? Okay, Dave Meyer seconded. Speak to why you think this amendment is appropriate.
First, I'd like to say this amendment is congruent with Mass General Law, Chapter 214, Section 7B, which covers the noise pollution shooting range exemption from liability and hours of operation. Section 7B states that no standards and rules adopted by any state, city, or town agency for limiting levels of noise in terms of decibel level, which may occur in the outdoor atmosphere, shall apply to ranges exempted from liability under provisions of this section. Such ranges shall be prohibited from operating between the hours of 10 p.m. and 8 a.m. unless otherwise allowed by their local governing body. The Supreme Court's decision in the New York State Rifle and Pistol Association versus Bruin guarantees the right of the Second Amendment. In New York State Rifle and Pistol Association versus Bruin, the Supreme Court overturned a century-old firearms licensing scheme that required people to seek concealed carry permits to demonstrate that they needed for self-defense. Rather than balancing government interest against the scope of the firearm restrictions through a strict intermediate scrutiny, the Bruin Court held that historical tradition approach is now required. Under this approach, when the Second Amendment's plain text covers an individual's conduct, a law restricting that conduct must be consistent with the nation's historical tradition of firearm regulation. Part of this guarantee is the right to train and/or practice. Training and practice on your property therefore constitutes historical use as a private range. Any bylaw that would infringe on my right to target practice due to a noise ordinance will open this town up for massive lawsuits. That's it.
Thank you, Mr. Dufresne. So this is an amendment. It's on the floor. The main motion, which Mr. Kohler made, which was seconded, we put aside while we discussed the amendment. So our discussion right now is whether the amendment should be passed by the body. Who wants to speak to whether the amendment, as proposed by Mr. Dufresne, should be allowed or not? The mic is here. Yes, sir. Mr. Wellman. Remember to go nice and tight to the mic and to say your name and where you live.
Justin Wellman at Williamsburg Road. And just a question of clarification, excuse me, under exemptions, allergies. Under exemptions, line 11, it lists domestic mechanical equipment, the outdoor use of domestic mechanical equipment such as but not limited to lawnmowers, leaf blowers, etc. between 7 a.m. and 11 p.m. I'm married to a teacher, and in the winter months, he has to be out around 5 in the morning. Would that exclude snow blowers for us to do snow removal?
Okay, let me repeat this again. Good question, not for now. We're speaking to whether or not the amendment, which proposed the specific gun exemption as a number 12, should be voted up or down. That's what we're speaking about right now. Whoever wants to speak, please line up. Use the mic, come nice and close to the mic.
Tirza Leah Schwartz, still Sears Road. I'm just wondering if there's a way that we could put aside the amendment so that we could discuss the whole proposal, so we understand that. It seems that would make sense. I'm not saying a yes or no, but I'm just wondering procedurally.
If the mover and his second wish to put those, withdraw them for now and re-raise them at a later time today, I will certainly allow that. It's up to them, because right now on the floor is the amendment. So, Mr. Dufresne, where'd you go? Do you wish to talk about the main motion now and then come back to your amendment, or do you want us to vote on the amendment right now? Your choice, and your seconds.
I would like to vote on my amendment as presented.
Okay, so even if the second wanted to do as you said, Ms. Schwartz, the mover doesn't. Yes.
Lauren Mills, West Road.
Bring up that mic.
Lauren Mills, West Road. And I wasn't going to speak today on My Heart's an AFib again from the last forum. And I'm sorry if people thought that I caused a rift in the town, but there's one aspect that I think is really important for people to know, and that's the reason that we had the forum. There's a range law that exempts gun noise from liability. So there already is, if you have a range, the range law exempts gun noise from liability. It's already in the law, but it's a constructed range. So the difference between what happened on West Road when several people used AR-15s and it amplified, people from about a mile away could hear it, and it was very disruptive. That was not a constructed range, that was shooting at trees. And so the police and the select board at the time, even the Board of Health, they said that the range law exempted it from liability, but in actuality, Alan Sewell, the lawyer, said that that was a disturbance of the peace because it was not a constructed range. So
I have to interrupt you. I have to just make sure that I understand. What you're saying is the amendment on the floor, which we're speaking to right now, exclusively the amendment. You're saying you disagree with it because you think Mr. Dufresne was talking about constructed ranges, not home ranges. Is that? I'm trying to understand what you're saying.
Yeah, I believe he's saying that constructed ranges are exempt, and they already are exempt. If he wants to put in the gun noise, that means he is adding that anybody can shoot however they want on any property, and that will still be, the police and everyone will still say that that is exempt from gun noise. From disturbance of the peace. So this is a very important issue, and I think the noise bylaw was exclusively kept gun noise out of it, and it would be up to whoever wants to interpret the law whether or not the gun noise is disturbing the peace or not. But to actually put it in there gives anybody the allowance to shoot however they want from 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. as loud as they want with as many guns as they want, and that would not be considered disturbing the peace. That's what I think he is saying.
Thank you. Mr. Cole.
So I would vote against this amendment. This is the exact reason I did not put a stand in there on the Second Amendment. This is not about gun rights. State and federal gun rights preempt any town bylaws. They don't, I strongly object to supporting them or excluding them in this bylaw. This is a bylaw like any other town bylaw that you might want to say, oh, we want to exempt guns too. This has nothing to do with it, and I resent this floor being hijacked to that whole mentality. Keep it neutral. I have friends who are on both sides of the Second Amendment. I value their relationship, and I appreciate their opinion. I'm not trying to force this into a gun issue, period.
Okay, I hope other people are going to line up. We want to hear from other voices. What we are speaking to is whether or not to add an amendment to the proposed bylaw under exemptions, a 12th exemption that would say noise created by the discharge of firearms between the hours of 8 o'clock, I will say a.m., and 10 o'clock p.m. That would be an exemption. If this amendment passes, we're going to speak to the amendment. Name and address, please.
Thank you. My name is Mary Johnson. I'm a resident of West Road, and I've lived in Ashfield for 47 years. I grew up here, also the daughter of a Vietnam veteran who volunteered twice to serve the country and was blown up and injured and disabled by the war. I grew up learning how to hunt, how to fire a rifle, and I fully support what Mr. Kohler said. This bylaw is an important bylaw for the town about noise and nuisance noise. And as a resident who has both of these issues that I'm faced with, dealing with the nuisance noise that we have not had a way to address, I've looked into this and looked into what other noise ordinance bylaws exist around the state. And there are very similar bylaws that towns as far away as Wellesley, Northampton, Southampton, they do have, and they have not been constrained by a fear of being sued for having a noise ordinance. And I appreciate that Mr. Kohler wrote a very neutral noise ordinance. If we were, for example, to have someone decide that they wanted to buy a property right in the center of town and put in a motors cross and not have a nuisance bylaw in place, they could do that, as I understand it. If you had someone move in right next to you who had a fraternity mentality and wanted to play their music on full blast and heavy metal all day, and you worked from home like I do, or had to teach children from home, you would like to have a noise ordinance that could give you some protection from a nuisance like that. So I fully support that the statement that Mr. Kohler put forward, take a close look at it, and I also please consider, do not tie this to the Second Amendment. We have those protections in place with very forceful lobbyists continuing to protect those for all the good reasons that they have. This is not about that. It does not need to tie that to us and a fear that people are going to say we're going to be sued. If we get sued, we should face the lawsuit and put in the correct terminology so that we are following the law, because that's the spirit of this bylaw, as I understand it. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am, we're speaking about an amendment that wishes to exempt in a new subsection 12 noise created by the discharge of a firearm between 8 a.m. and 10 p.m. That's what we're speaking to.
Deanna Sears on South Street. I just want to say I'm in favor of adding the amendment. I recently acquired my LTC license, FID LTC license, and I haven't had any practice shooting, certainly need it. And I think that in general, people move to Ashfield because they want peace and quiet, and they also want the option to do whatever they want to do on their property. There's gun laws that protect the distance from which you can shoot the gun. The law-abiding people that shoot the guns on their own property are abiding by those laws, and I think that if you're really concerned about the noise, then why can't we add this exemption as well? And I don't think that we're taking away from the excessive noise that people are concerned with. We're just making sure that our rights are protected.
Thank you.
Road 11th on West Road, and I'm one of the people who is directly affected by the noise from the gunfire that Lauren spoke to, which is the whole reason why we brought this amendment, or this amendment came to be to begin with. I would just say that there's a run gun club in town. People can go shoot there. And I'd also say that there's lots of laws that tell us what we can and cannot do on our property. This would be no different.
Are you speaking to the amendment?
I'm speaking to the amendment.
Okay.
Yes, I am speaking to the
Which
amendment.
is, should we exempt noise from the discharge of a firearm?
Right, and what I'm saying is I am greatly opposed to it. I think it's absurd for people to be able to have to live in fear and anxiety because of hearing gunfire, especially with all the violence happening in the world today. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Shea, speaking to the amendment.
Yes, my name is Jack Shea. Don't usually attend town meeting, but I feel this is an important town meeting to attend. I live on Delaware Road. My wife and I built a home about 45 years ago. Had 4 children, they all went to school in Ashfield. And as a side note, my dad started teaching locally in 1948 with Mr. Smithers in 1- and 2-room schoolhouses, so maybe some of you have my dad. My job for 44 years was teaching in an international school. I taught Russian students, Chinese students, Lithuanian students, Mexicans, Americans, so on and so forth. They all looked a little different. They spoke, some of them had trouble speaking English, but they all wanted respect. They all wanted respect, and the only way to get that was take time and effort to get their respect. And if one of my students was causing a problem, maybe he was making too much noise at night, Some of the things I wouldn't do as a teacher is I wouldn't run to the school newspaper and run 3 months of complaints without talking to my student first, face to face. I wouldn't spread rumors about my student.
Mr. Shea, are you speaking to the amendment?
I am in support of this amendment, and it's important that I'm allowed to continue.
As long as you stay on the amendment, you'll be allowed to continue.
It is in support of his amendment. That's why I'm up here seriously trying to speak without being interfered with. I would make sure that I wouldn't bring it to the school board and issue a complaint about my student. In short, if I treated my student this way, I would not have lasted 44 years in either work. I would get fired. But in Ashfield, we had a new student. His name was Jackie Shee. He bought some land on West Road. He was from Newton, Mass. And he's excited to have this chance to come up and exercise his rights with his friends. And perhaps he overdid it. There's no question he overdid it. But instead, this Jackie Shee was charged, he was tried, and he was convicted in the public eye. Basically, he was run out of town. The reason it's important to have this bylaw amendment is that we don't do this again. We need to talk to our neighbors. If that Jackie Shee had been talked to right off the bat and reasoned with, and the time was spent to develop a rapport with him, we wouldn't all be sitting here today. We would probably have a resolution. He probably would have modified his behavior, and they would have come into some type of agreement. I want to conclude. Boston has a population of 4,327,000. This amendment cites Boston rules a lot. Pepperell, Mass., this amendment was fostered after Pepperell. Pepperell was 12,113 people, a land mass of 23.2 miles. Ashfield has a population of 1,734 people with twice that land mass. It took a person from out of town to travel to Newton, Mass. to talk to Jackie Shee and explain really what was going on here. Ashfield doesn't need this new bylaw. And if it does, it needs to adopt what has been proposed here. It simply needs to give respect to your neighbor and to take the time to learn about your neighbor and work out your differences. Thank you very much.
Okay, good note. As you know, we don't applaud or boo anybody during this discussion. Yes, ma'am.
To Dan Klein, Conway Road, I would like to move to vote on this amendment because I think everyone's had their say and I would like to be able to go home before dinner time.
Amen. Is there a second?
I second.
I need to be identifying a second for the record. Okay. Did you get that? Did you stand up? I forget your name, sir.
Tom Morigano, West Road.
There we go. Thank you very much. Okay, so this is a motion to cut off debate. It requires a 2/3 majority. It is non-debatable. It is non-amendable. If you pass this, then we will go right to a vote on the proposed amendment. And the amendment that we're talking about would create an exemption number 12, which would exempt noise created by the discharge of firearms between the hours of 8 ante-meridian a.m. and 10 post-meridian p.m. So what you're voting for is whether to stop discussion on that proposed amendment. All in favor of stopping debate on that proposed amendment, say aye. Aye. All opposed, say nay. Nay. Okay. Who are abstaining? No abstention. So, according to our bylaw passed in 2018, I can make a determination of whether we have a 2/3 vote. If any 7 people want a count, I would say we just voted to cut off debate. I would think we have 2/3. That's my judgment. If anybody disagrees with me, if 7 of you disagree with me, the bylaw says we'll then have a count. Our tellers will get busy and we'll have an exact number of hands that say aye and hands that say no. Does anyone disagree with my assessment when I say I think we've got the 2/3 to cut off debate? There's 1 who disagrees. There's 2 who disagrees. There's 3 who disagrees. Anybody else disagree with my assessment that we have enough to cut off debate? All right, so that's it. We have cut off debate. The motion carries. Now we will move on the amendment. All those in favor of the proposed point of order?
Procedure.
Sure.
I request.
Please use the...
Ron Kohler, Bailey Road, I think. I request that we do a secret ballot and protect people's private thoughts.
I second.
I object.
Wait a minute. You can't just yell out. You'll raise your hand, I'll recognize you, I promise. Who seconded? I need a name for the minutes. Okay. Second. Okay, so this will, the town clerk, you have paper ballots ready? Okay, so what we, point of order.
There was a motion.
Your name, please, come and... We keep a record, right? We keep minutes and a recorded record.
Dave Meyer, 472 West Road. There was a motion and a second, and we can't get any paper ballots out until we vote. We have to vote if we want to accept his deal, no?
The motion is to change the method of voting by having paper ballots, which means secret ballots. So no, so you don't raise your hand and say, yes, I'm in favor of the motion, or I'm not. Instead, it would be what was referred to as a secret ballot, what Robert calls a paper ballot, which means that everyone will write down their yes or their no. It'll go into a box that's passed out by the tellers. We'll then come up, we'll take those pieces of paper out, we'll find out how people voted on the amendment.
I understand how paper works, but what I don't understand is, he made a motion, right?
He made a motion.
He made a motion, and someone seconded that, right?
Right.
I've been sitting here since 9:30 this morning.
Oh, you're right, we haven't voted on this motion.
We haven't voted on his motion.
You're right, I absolutely apologize.
Okay, thank you.
I've been here since 9:30 this morning.
Okay.
You're absolutely right. All those in favor of a secret paper ballot as a changed method of voting from either yelling yes or no or raising your hand. All those in favor of a paper ballot, say aye. Aye. All those opposed, say nay. Nay. I would say the nays have it. Does anybody challenge? Okay. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to bring up our tellers. Mrs. Kohler, you were sworn in.
Wait a minute, I thought procedure.
Time out.
Procedural.
The word is point of order, yes.
Point of order, sorry. You have to have 7 people disagree, correct?
No, that's for the 2/3 required to cut off debate. We already decided that.
Right. So now...
This is a simple majority to change the method of voting.
So now we don't get to choose if you, against your decision on if the yeas or nays have that vote?
I don't understand what you're saying.
How did you just determine that we're moving to paper ballot?
Because I think that the nays outweigh the ayes, and therefore we're going to, since somebody objected to my
So I would
decision.
like the opportunity to object to that paper ballot decision. I don't believe that.
Time out. What happened is I asked, does anybody disagree with my judgment that the nays carried?
Okay.
2 people, excuse me, 2 people said they objected. So we're going to have a count rather than relying on my judgment.
Okay.
The tellers are going to count it. At that point,
7.
that was for the 2/3, right? Yeah, somebody want to go up here to the microphone and address the chair? Ms. Apple, would you like to address?
Yes, sir. Marco Apple, 23 March Road. Okay. You're asking, we're going to vote on the paper ballot. Yes or no?
Yes. Yes, we are doing that.
Yes. Now, which item will this paper ballot be referring to? The addition to the noise law, allowing gun noise to be exempt, or the first thing that Mr. Kohler presented before. There was number one, Mr. Kohler. Number two, this addition. So which one are we voting on?
We are voting right now on whether or not
on the amendment.
whether to have a paper ballot in order to vote on the amendment.
Oh, Lord have mercy.
Is anybody else confused on what we're voting for? All right, I'm responding to your motions. These are not my motions. Excuse me. Time out. So I made a judgment that people did not want to have a paper ballot, and two hands went up challenging my judgment. In respect to recognizing those objections, I'm not going to force it down your throat. I'm going to let you vote on it, but we need tellers right now. I was duly corrected that, in fact, I hadn't had a vote yet on that, and that's what we're going through the process of making sure that we know whether we want to. Right? Yes. All right, we have to take some time. The clerk is getting the paper ballots and the boxes ready. Right?
No, we're doing paper ballots.
What we are voting on, what you'll be asked to vote on, everybody, time out. What you're about to be asked to vote on is whether or not to have a paper ballot. Right? There's a motion that's been seconded to have a paper ballot. I need tellers. Okay, where is the town clerk? We're going to do it. Quiet in the house, please. Everyone who is a registered voter in Ashfield, raise your hand right now. Who along this flank is not a registered voter? Okay. Who along this flank is not a registered voter? Raise your hand if you're not a registered voter. Who along the back is not a registered voter? Okay, if you stay where you are, do I have your word? You will not vote. You will not raise your hand to what I'm about to say, right? Right? Okay, that's it. If we could all be seated right now and listen carefully. All those, please be seated so that we can count your votes. If you wish to have a paper, quote unquote, secret ballot, if you wish to say yes to the motion for the paper ballot, raise your hand and keep it up until you've been counted, until we tell you to put it down. If you want to say yes to a paper ballot, raise your hand.
What item on the amendment?
For the amendment. We're voting on the amendment only. Paper ballot for the amendment. I need for people to stop shouting out.
Okay, and I got 18 to kick. Okay. So now, did you do it? Yeah, I did all that. Oh, you did all that? Okay, so 17 and 18 is 35. Yes, it is. Okay.
Everybody's here. Did we get the front table? Okay. Can anybody uncounted so far? No. All right, you may put your hands down. If you want to vote no to the paper ballot question, please raise your hand and keep it up until you can be counted.
Did you do the clock? Did you do it? I did. So 27.
The golf course is enough. I don't care.
Oh, yeah.
I know.
Oh, is it? Which one? Yeah. They don't have to count.
Okay, I'm sorry, I put your hands down, I'm so sorry. So the tally is?
71 yes, 64 no.
So we will have a paper ballot. And we're on the amendment, the proposed amendment by Mr. Dufresne to exempt I'm sorry, point of
Tom
order.
Mtg, Westford, I'd like to be recognized. I'd like a recount. We're going to play this game. I'd like a recount. I want everybody to do the hand vote again.
Hang on a second. You're asking for a motion for reconsideration?
Yes, I am.
How did you vote?
I voted that I do not want a paper ballot.
Well then, since...
Did I understand it wrong?
Excuse me.
I'm sorry. I'm a little...
Well, calm down. Because if everybody's like that, this
I'm
place
sorry.
is chaos.
I'm sorry. I'm
All right,
sorry.
thank you for understanding. Here's the way it works. In town meeting time and in Roberts. And if you want, I'll show it to you. If you vote in the majority, you can ask for reconsideration. If you don't, you can't ask for reconsideration. Right? People, moderators call that sour grapes motion. You're not sour grapes. But that's the way that it works. So since you didn't vote in the majority, 71 said yes. 71 said yes and 64 said no. You were one of those 64, you can't ask for reconsideration. If somebody who voted yes wants reconsideration, we can entertain it if they have a reason. And if you want, I'll show it to you.
And I respect what you're saying. I just feel like the goalposts are being moved. It's like the rules change, and it's very disheartening. You know, you look at the reason why people lose faith in things, and I'm very disappointed with the way this is progressed.
Well, okay, hang on for 1 second. Hang on for 1 second. These are Robert's rules. They've been in existence for 120 years. This is town meeting time, how to run a town meeting. These exact rules have been in effect for a very long time in order to promote civil discourse and orderly meeting.
Right.
So what I just told you is not the Buzz Eisenberg rule. It's here, and you can borrow these right now and look through it. You can see them.
No, I respect that. I feel like I'm getting a little schooled here. Like when this gentleman's talking and telling me about Black Lives Matter and white privilege, I didn't come here to hear that. And I just have to state that for the record. Thank you.
Well, hang on a second. Everybody, we just were reading the papers in the last month and a half. There was a case called Barron that talked about some people, you familiar with it? I'm glad you are. The Supreme Judicial Court just said some people who speak are not eloquent and they speak about their life experience. Mr. Shea insisted on speaking about his as well. So I'm having a hard time here trying to decide what is and isn't pertinent to what we are. But I hear you. I don't want anybody to walk away from here feeling unheard. My only job is to make sure that you all feel heard.
Let me be heard, and I'm appreciative of that.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much. All right, so we are going to have a paper ballot because 71 to 64 said that they want that. Are we prepared, Madam Clerk? Okay, so there's a process here. People will be collecting pieces of paper. They will be giving you something to write on. They will be putting it in a box, and then we have to count it. It's going to take some time to do. That's the nature of paper ballots. So you can talk now while that process is being done. Just add a little levity to the no, as one question was, this doesn't say on, it says no. So the answer to our question is no to the amendment 99, yes to the amendment 48. So we have answered the question as the amendment. We're back to talk about the main motion, which is the bylaw that was put into record by Mr. Kohler in a second. Mr. Carter.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. For a crowd to be here on annual town meeting day at 4 o'clock in the afternoon of this size shows that there are very deep feelings about what we're talking about right now. As I am so often, I'm reminded of a story, right? Remember Betty Crocker, the Betty Crocker cake mixes, right? You bring it home, you put it in the bowl, and it's, you know, you had to add an egg, right? Now, they could have added the egg, but they wanted to make you feel like you actually made the cake because you were adding the egg and maybe a little bit of milk.
You've been here too long today.
For this meeting, as far as I could tell from the amendment that we just voted not to take up, is that Mr. Dufresne was trying to add the egg to try to feel that he was part of it, because I believe it really states the same thing as Section G. Right? Section G, relationship to other laws. Nothing in this bylaw shall be construed to restrict, amend, repeal, or otherwise limit the application or enforcement of existing federal, state, or town of Ashfield laws. Again, I go back to the idea that there are some very deep feelings. What he was saying is already in this. And if the room is of the feeling that I'm sensing from the front of the room, is that there's a very deep divide here where we can't come to some kind of compromise and be able to think about what needs to be done to move the ball forward, I would very strongly encourage someone to move to table this article.
All right, Mr. Myers, you will be recognized in a minute. Promise you. You can remain standing and come up here if you'd like. I just want to give you a point of order, a motion to table, which requires a super majority of 2/3, in which case the 7 rule applies. That is non-debatable and non-amendable on a motion to table. If there's a motion to postpone either to a date certain or indefinitely, that is amendable, that is debatable, and that can be discussed. So a motion to table requires a supermajority, can't be discussed, can't be amended. A motion to postpone indefinitely or to a date and time certain, that is amendable, is debatable, requires only a simple majority, not a supermajority. So you had your hand up in response to Mr. Carter's question. Does anybody wish to table?
Right, so what did you could you repeat what you just said about tabling?
Sure, as long as you talk into the mic. Lift the mic. Thank you. And it quite requested that I repeat it. A motion to table is non-amendable, non-debatable, and requires a 2/3 majority. It's put on it's laid on the table and it's somewhere. You could recall it somewhere in the future or not, but it's in netherworld. A motion to postpone indefinitely is kind of the kissing cousin. It could always be brought back, but it only requires a simple majority, not a 2/3, and somebody can amend it to a date certain, a time certain, tonight at midnight, whatever we want, right? So the difference is whether you want a simple majority vote, largely, which would be a motion to postpone indefinitely or to a date certain, or a motion to table, which requires a supermajority of 2/3. If we go to a supermajority of 2/3, I will tell you what I think happened, and in answer to your question, Mr. Dufresne, if 7 people think I'm wrong when I say what I thought happened, you don't have to leave, Mr. Meyer. Are you done? No. Oh, I thought you were going to make a motion. Oh, okay. He's going to make a motion.
The second, I make a motion on the second one.
To postpone indefinitely?
The simple majority.
Postpone indefinitely. Not to a date certain, but indefinitely.
Correct.
Okay. Is there a second to the motion to postpone indefinitely?
I second.
Who said that?
I did.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. Very good. Discussion on the motion to postpone. This is debatable. Who wants to come up to the microphone? Identify yourself, speak well into the microphone.
Arthur Panamil, Bug Hill Road. That was my question, if this is it procedurally correct, either postpone it indefinitely or have a special town meeting other than this right now, because it's going to turn into major things. I guess I'm piggybacking on your thing a little bit more so.
I can answer the question. If this motion carries, then Article 34 for the proposed noise bylaw is postponed indefinitely, and then the board can decide to bring it forward or not at a certain time. Go ahead.
And if that fails, is to postpone it indefinitely, then we make a motion to have a special town meeting and discuss this? Just
if people decide not to postpone it, we're going to continue today.
I understand, but can you make a motion to make this subject a special town meeting versus keeping this day going on while you still have this town business to do?
I don't think we can make a motion for a special town meeting. One person speaking at a time, thank you. You can't make a motion for a special town meeting. We can make a motion to postpone it indefinitely. Thank you for the question. It's a good question. I think a lot of people had it.
Ron Kohler on 6-8 Bailey Road. I urge you to vote against that. We are all here now. This has been many, many months in the making. There have been 3 public sessions where everyone was invited. Before the petition, there was one after, and I would rather see this fail today, so I can get on with my life, than to put it off. It takes a lot of energy to lift this sucker. So my suggestion is not to do it, not to put it off.
Not to postpone it. Ms. Link, you had your hand up. If you wish to speak, please just stand in line. It'll save time.
Mary Lynn, Buckland Road. I think the question that was being asked before was postponing indefinitely or to a date certain, but none of us can say what the date certain is, which is why, so how do we postpone to a date certain? Does that have to have a date today? That's my procedural.
You're right. I was being too Robertsy, right? Because that's what the motions are that are permitted under the rules. So I was being like a parrot and repeating them. But you're right. Pragmatically, nobody here can say what that date certain would be, right? I suppose a motion could be made to the next special town meeting without identifying a date. I suppose there could be that motion. That would be in order. But it's really the motion that's been made by Mr. Myers is a motion to postpone it indefinitely, and then we'll have to call it back and see how that happens. Yes, ma'am.
Thanks, Mary Johnson, West Road. My procedural question is around a hands vote, an aye or nay, and a written vote, because we've already been through the fact that when you heard a majority, it actually turned out you didn't hear the majority. So that is my question, and my comment about that is, to Kohler's point at the beginning, the loudest voices in this room come from the most dominant male white voices. I, as a single woman in this meeting and this town, do feel intimidated by people who yell out in town meeting about things that I find as racist. I grew up in this town with a sister who is black. My nephew is black and serves on the volunteer fire department. So there are people in this meeting who have already been offended by the way people have behaved. We all have a chance in our democracy to get a chance to hear other people's perspectives. It's important because you can't see what someone else sees if you don't walk in their shoes and you're unwilling to listen. So I would request that the rest of the votes on this motion be written, because you're not hearing the unloud voices as much as
Be written or be hands raised that I don't count, that I don't
that
guess.
they be just as the last one, that people get to vote with a
You're making for
paper
a motion
ballot.
for a paper ballot again. Is that what you're...
That's what I'm saying, because this
Okay, so once
meeting
again,
in
folks,
particular,
I can't help but school people. So here's what we're not allowed to do under Roberts. We're not allowed to have our speech and then make our motion, which then other people didn't have it. What we do is make our speech or make our motion. If a motion is made and seconded, I'll allow you to speak to it to explain why. I am not going to do what I said I was going to do again, and we will talk about your paper ballot. In March 19th of 2018, I was asked by the then board to, in order to hasten the amount of time that we sit in this room, when it was obvious there was a vote for me to say, I hear a 2/3 vote. If 7 people disagree with me, then we'll go through the time-consuming process of counting it all. That's why the moderator was given by you, by this meeting, was only to expedite things. At this point, it didn't work. Some people felt that I was wrong. You just pointed out that I was wrong in my assessment because one side was louder than the other side for whatever reason. So I will not say whether we hit 2/3. We will go through, hang on, Ms. Johnson. We will go through the process of counting. I'm going to allow the motion for a paper ballot, right? And we're going to count by a hand vote how many people want a paper ballot and how many don't, if it's in fact seconded. Is there a second to Ms. Johnson's motion for a paper ballot at this juncture? Okay, there is a motion and a second. Well,
We're not actually voting on bylaws.
The reason that I called for this is last time when we were not done debating,
hang
I was
on.
cut off.
Hang on. I think that that's a subordinate motion because it talks about how to vote on the motion to postpone indefinitely. So I think that's a subordinated motion because it's a method of voting on that motion. So Mr. Carter just asked a really good question. How can another motion be made when there's a motion on the floor which is to postpone indefinitely, which is made and seconded?
That's the same thing we did the first time.
So, that speaks to the method of voting, and I think it's a subordinated motion. Yes, we're still debating the motion on whether or not to postpone indefinitely, which is the motion on the table. And then we're going to entertain a motion to pay the moderator more next year. I don't know who the second was for Mrs. Johnson's motion.
We had several people I wrote against. There's me.
Okay, so, yeah, I guess it's a subordinate motion, so we have to vote right now. We have a chance to talk to that. And then we're going to come back and complete our conversation about whether or not to postpone indefinitely. So, that's where we're at, but it is a subordinate motion. I'm 90% sure. So, what we're going to talk about right now is whether or not, do we need to have a discussion on the paper ballots, or can we just vote on the paper ballots without a discussion? Does anybody want to speak to the question of whether to have a paper ballot? No.
I do. Reason to have a paper ballot.
I think you just did.
I just suggested that we have one. But the fact that I even have to stand here and vote again by voice to have a paper ballot for something that I just said, I feel intimidated by having to speak in front of this audience that's already booed me and my family because we're not all white. That is a problem.
With all due respect, and I appreciate it, I heard it and I allowed it, I did just hear it. You did just say it.
But now we
So
have
there's
to
nothing.
vote by voice again about
But-
having a paper ballot.
You're making a statement, you're making a motion, then you're repeating your statement. So we're respecting your request that this body entertain whether or not what we're about to vote on should be done by a paper ballot or by a hand count. And it won't be by me alone, it'll be a hand count, our tellers will count your hands. So, everybody ready? How many people want to vote on whether or not, was that a point of order?
Yeah, repeat what we're voting on.
I didn't hear you because you didn't have a microphone on. What did you say?
Can you just repeat what we're voting on?
That's just what I was doing. I need a big raise for next year. We have a motion to postpone indefinitely the vote on the bylaw which has been proposed. That motion to postpone indefinitely requires a simple majority. It's amendable and it's debatable. We now have a motion that the vote on whether or not to postpone it indefinitely be done by a paper ballot, which some of you have referred to as a secret ballot. Roberts calls it a paper ballot. That's to change the method of voting is what that motion is asking for. That has been seconded. I just asked if anybody wants to speak to changing the method of voting, and I heard nobody who wants to. Does anybody want to speak to that before I call for that vote? No. Okay, so now, rather than relying on my judgment, I'm going to ask the town clerk to convene the tellers to count hands. Everyone who wishes, you have the tellers ready? Tellers, tellers, tellers. those who want to vote on the motion to postpone indefinitely by paper ballot, all those who want to change the method of voting to a paper ballot, raise your hand and keep it up until we tell you to put it down. You're voting on whether to vote by paper ballot. Madam Clerk, can they put their hands down? Yes. Everyone who is against voting by paper ballot, please raise your hand. We now have to count. For the record, we have a minute. You can put your hands down. Thank you so much. Okay. It was 20 yes for a paper ballot, 105 no opposed to the paper ballot. So we will not be using a paper ballot for this vote. Mrs. Robertson, you're speaking to the question of the motion to postpone indefinitely.
Yes, Emily Robertson, Baptist Corner Road. I wasn't planning on speaking at this particular moment, but I need to say I'm in favor of the motion to postpone. Ron stood up and made a comment that we're all here and this is the most fair way to do it, and I have to reiterate what we've been talking about for 30 years, is that town meeting is not the most fair way to do it. I could not go to any evening meetings. I am here representing multiple family members who cannot be here today. Cows can't cross their legs so the farmers can come vote. They have to be milked right now. And you know, there's plenty of people who are elderly or disabled. I didn't sit through the morning. I came here at 1 o'clock, and it's like, you know, more than 3 hours later, and I haven't been able to ask the question that I need to ask that isn't Second Amendment related, because we haven't even gotten to talking about that. But I guess my main point is this isn't fair. I've sat through Don Robinson talking about how this is the most fair form of government there is, but for years there's been one person from my family that showed up to represent 10, 12, 20 of us. There's 40 people that I am related to in this town. I'm up here, my daughter's downstairs. That's how many of us could come, and it's not because we don't care, we're not passionate. It's not a vote. We can't spend all afternoon sitting on a hard bench waiting for our chance to have our say. So I wholly support the motion to postpone. Thank you.
No. We're not going to chill other people's possibility to express their opinion with our in favor or opposed. Yeah.
Carter, Watkins, Bruce Corner Road. With total respect to your point, ma'am, may I make a motion to close debate and move to vote on this motion?
He wants to call the question to cut off debate. Is there a second? Second by... That is a non-debatable, non-amendable, requires a 2/3 vote rather than me guessing whether there's 2/3. We'll do it by a show of hands so that we know how people vote. We can certify that 2/3 did or did not get achieved by our vote. All those who wish to cut off debate on the question of whether to postpone indefinitely a deliberation on the proposed bylaw. All those who wish to cut off debate on the motion to postpone, please raise your hand and keep it up until you can be counted. Guess we have.
Yes, I know. For church? No. It's unfair. If it's unfair there, you might be able to spare there. And that's full time. Just because he got it, it's like but you can actually he also he also wrapped around the third door and then he farm
Madam Clerk, could they put their hands down? Yes. All of you, thank you so much for, you're going to need to ice your arms tonight, isn't you? All right, all those who are opposed to cutting off debate, please raise your hand. I think there's two. Is that right? The people who are opposed, your hands. Everybody who's opposed, raise your hand. Make sure that we get it right. 1, 2. Okay, there we go. So, the Mr. Carter's motion to Dr. Carter, Mr. Carter. That Carter's motion to cut off debate prevailed at 151 to 2. So we have stopped voting. So now we are going to vote on the motion to postpone it indefinitely, and we're going to do it by a hand vote. Tellers, we still need you, please. Madam Clerk, we ready? All those in favor of postponing this motion indefinitely, that is Mr. Kohler's main motion on the bylaw. If you want to postpone consideration of that indefinitely, please put up your hand and hold it up until we're counted. This requires a simple majority. You may put your hands down. All those opposed to postponing indefinitely, put your hand up and keep it up till you're counted. Okay, you may put your hands down. Okay, and so those who wish to postpone indefinitely were 55. Those opposed to postponing were 89. So the motion to postpone fails, and we're back to this debate on the main motion. So who wants to discuss the main motion? Mr. Myers, you may come up here as you know and use the microphone.
So, before we get to that, I have a really weird...
Is this a point of order? Because otherwise there's no...
Yeah, but it's a point of order.
All right.
Right. So the first time we voted, we had 134 people vote. The second time we voted, we had 125 people vote. The third time we voted, we had 153 people vote. And this last time, we had 154 people vote. So, there's something wrong with the counting that doesn't add up. People didn't leave.
So, there's a universe of possibilities. Number one, our tellers lied. Number two, some people left or came. Number three, some didn't vote and your moderator didn't ask for abstentions. Right? There's a number of possibilities. You choose which one. I am not choosing that the tellers lied.
That's okay.
Okay. Mr. Carter.
Carter, lots of Spruce Corner Road. I doubt very much that there's a lot of change in mind happening. May I make a motion to close debate on the bylaw and proceed to a vote?
Okay. It's a motion to cut off debate on the principal bylaw. The main motion is before us, which is the bylaw that has been proposed by what's your name, Kohler? So is there a second to the motion to cut off debate?
Second.
Did you get who was that? Raise your hand.
Jack Klein, 948 Conway Road.
Thank you. Okay. So this is non-amendable, as you know. It's non-debatable, as you know. It requires a supermajority of 2/3, as you know. And I am not going to rely on my judgment. As was pointed out earlier, it was wrong once, and I don't want it to be wrong again on this. So we have to have the tellers once again determine whether or not we achieve 2/3 on Mr. Carter's motion to cut off debate, and then vote on the main motion, the bylaw itself. Or do we continue debate on the bylaw itself? So, are we ready? Tellers? All those in favor of cutting off debate, will require a 2/3 supermajority. Raise your hand and keep it up until counted. You may lower your hands. All those opposed to cutting off debate, please raise your hand. Keep it up until you're counted.
Six. Okay. That's what we do. You said 6, right?
You may lower your hands and let me do it this time. We're trying to find out 2/3 of the overall body. If you abstain, please raise your hand. I think I see 2, is that right? Keep your hand up so we can count. We want 2/3 of the overall number. You may put your hands down. Oh, this is double this, right? So there were 2 abstentions, there were 102 yeses and 43 noes. So that means there were 147 total voters, 102 voted to cut off debate. That is more than 2/3. 2/3 of 147 would have been
49.
99.
98.
Okay, 98, we got 102. Right? I'm not tired. There's a reason I went to law school, not med school. Anyway, so we have cut off debate. We are now ready to vote on the main motion. We're going to vote by a showing of hands. The tellers who are keeping busy are going to remain busy. Right?
Point of order.
Point of order, Mr. Pantamil. Please use the mic. Art Pantamil.
Art Pantamil, Buckville Road. Are you telling me that this, how many page section that we're voting on, I can't even ask a question about this before we vote on it? Number 1, what's the matter with the old one? Number 2, how's it going to be enforced? You're asking us to vote on when we have questions about how this whole thing's even going to work.
I'm not asking you to do anything. The motion was made, it was seconded, it was just voted on, and more than 2/3 of the people
And there was
said
a
to
lot
cut
of people
off.
that wanted to talk before he made his thing.
That might be, that usually is what happens when we cut off debate. So that's true, that's what happens. Some people don't get to speak. That's what cutting off debate is.
All right.
So I'm sorry, that's what happened.
Me and I can say whatever up here then. I've also lived here for 54 years.
I'm sorry, you can't say whatever.
Well, I'm going to say what I'm going to say.
Well, you can say whatever because it's unlawful.
My family grew up with respect and knowledge about firearms. It's been passed down for generations. And that doesn't mean I don't care about this town too.
They did say, but other words, right?
I didn't want to stop you now.
We're just going to vote. We've cut off debate. We have cut off debate. Well, there's nothing. Okay, so that is permitted. All right, I have a discretion as moderator to fix a method of voting, and rather than have us go through another half an hour, we will vote by paper ballot and avoid that process. Folks, those of you who, once you separate the yes from the no, you don't then have to fold it again. That makes it harder for people to count. You are voting for the main motion. The main motion is to adopt the bylaw as written in Article 34 of your warrant. If you vote yes, you want the bylaw to pass. If you vote no, you do not want the bylaw to pass.
Yeah? Okay.
Who needs a ballot, a paper ballot, who has not received one yet? Raise your hand if you need to be. There's one over there. Mr. D'Amato, did you get a paper ballot? Okay. Who needs one up there? If you vote yes, you want the bylaw to pass, the noise bylaw. If you vote no, you do not want the bylaw to pass.
Okay, so boxes are empty again, we're going to be sending the boxes around.
They were started probably like 2.
Okay, we'll start counting.
Okay, folks, we have a vote count. Yeah. Okay. We have, by the way, I just want to start by saying our tellers take an oath before they count. Our clerk takes an oath before they count. I'm not suggesting that anybody thinks they're lying, but just in case anybody's wondering, they take an oath. On the secret ballot vote on Article 34, the proposed noise ordinance, yes 92, no 54. The motion carries to adopt the bylaw. We're now on to Article 35, which is a single-use plastic article. Mr. Kohler, you were going to make a motion.
Mr. Moderator,
Mr. Kohler.
I make a motion that we postpone indefinitely the next article.
Please. We're so close. There's a motion to postpone indefinitely, that's amendable and debatable, and if there's a second, there's a second, third, fourth, fifth, and sixth.
Yes, can I have a name?
We just need one name for the minutes. Gregory Thorpe. No, it's Cynthia Cranston is our second. So, thank you, Mr. Cole. You may be seated. You can come up again, but you can't speak right after you make that motion. Somebody else can, unless you're a select board member, which you no longer are.
Point of order.
So, point of order. Who said that? Mr. Cole.
He makes the motion. Does he need to? He didn't make the motion, so why are we?
He just made a motion to postpone indefinitely, and it was seconded.
But he didn't make it.
Oh, he didn't make a motion. He can make a motion to postpone Article 35 discussion. He can make a motion to advance it, right? He can do all kinds of things. He doesn't have to put the motion on the floor. What we have now is a motion to postpone indefinitely. Does anybody want to speak to whether we should approve his motion to postpone indefinitely? Anybody else? Mr. Kohler.
It's not because this bylaw isn't very important to a number of people in this town. It's just because I think we're all very tired. And this will allow a year to go by. I'll bring it back either at a special town meeting that's convenient or an annual town meeting. And it'll give us a chance to work on it. We already had 2 or 3 amendments from talking to people. And we can make it better in that amount of time. So I offer to anyone in this room, if you've studied it and you have some thoughts you want to share with me, I'd be glad to do it, but we'll see you later.
Okay, so there's a motion to postpone indefinitely. Mr. Meyer.
I'd like to speak to the hypocrisy on your motion to postpone when before you didn't want to postpone what was more important to some other people. I think it's absolutely hypocritical. And anybody who votes for this and voted for the other thing, you are all hypocrites. Put me on the record. Dave Meyer, 472 West Road.
Any other comments on the board question on the motion to postpone indefinitely? Yes.
To Leah Miller, Stonewall Drive. I just want to remind us to have, like, the idea that we're here with good intentions. So I think that what was happening an hour or 2 hours ago is different now, but I'd still like to respect people's intentions.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions on the motion to postpone indefinitely? Are we ready to vote? Vote.
I was Esther Kohler, 243 Main Street. I've kind of waited all day for this, brought my kids here, so I'm ready to vote. Let's do this. This is important. We're a little behind the times. Let's do it.
Further discussion on the motion to postpone indefinitely? Yes.
I agree with that.
Please move into the mic. Thank you. Name and where you live.
Peter Carnes, Beldenville Road. I agree with Esther. We should vote. We all came here to vote.
Look, if you intend to speak, come on up. Save some time. Get in line. Mr. Cranston, come on up. Use the mic.
Doug Cranston, 326 River Drive, Ashfield, Mass. We went all through this before. Same thing. However, what we found out after the last time we talked about this in this building, the people who were at fault here or thought to be at fault, and they probably were, they came to the neighbors in the area in which all this happened. They apologized. They didn't really realize that you couldn't do that up here. And
Mr. Cranston, may I ask you a question? Are you still speaking about the noise ordinance?
I am.
Well, we just voted that. That's done. So now we're on to the single-use plastic We haven't even moved to approve that. There's a motion to postpone that discussion that we're considering right now. The other one is a done deal, it passed, and that's what happened. I don't blame you for being confused. I'm confused.
Yeah, you tell me about it.
It's clear as mud to me. Put it in Mrs. Cranston's. Yes, Ms. Howard.
Judy Howe, Watson's First Corner Road, as Chair of the Park Commission, and cleanup of the park ad nauseum. I think we should vote on this tonight, today, whatever time it is, because we need this ordinance.
We're talking about whether or not to postpone indefinitely Article 35, the single-use plastic bylaw, which has not been put into the record. We're just talking about whether to postpone that article. Any other comments, questions, contributions? Mr. Karavitas.
Eric Karavitas, Catrell Road. I want to thank Ron for his magnanimous effort to get this meeting on the way. I know how much he's working on these things. I think he's being very courteous, very thoughtful for people's thoughts, because I've been sitting here in a lot of hard seats. But I think it's a good motion, a good amendment or whatever you call it. Bylaw that should be voted on, since we're all here and thought about it and are interested in doing it. Thank you, Ron, for your effort.
Okay, thank you.
Mary Lynn Buckland Road, I move the question.
Call the question.
Whatever it is, I'm supposed to say.
She's called, okay, who seconded it? Okay. Say Tamsin Merrill, only because she's right here in the minority. And she seconded. So the question has been called again. You all know the routine. It is non-debatable. It is non-amendable. It requires a 2/3 majority. I will not call whether or not it passes by 2/3. We will do it by having our hardworking tellers do the count again. So what you are being asked, you have to deploy your troops again? They're coming. I had one person say that it was wrong. I'm being asked to do it in a voice vote. Who objects to me doing it on a voice vote? One person does. How many people want to do it on a voice vote? Okay, I would say that we're going to do it on a voice vote with one objection. If the minutes can reflect that Mr. Myers disagreed with that, then that would be fine so that his voice is heard. So,
Repeat what we're voting on.
I always do and I will. I promise. We are voting on whether or not to postpone indefinitely Article 35, which is the single-use plastic bylaw that's been proposed by a citizen's petition. That bylaw has not made it to the floor because there was a motion to postpone indefinitely our consideration of that bylaw. So we are voting whether to postpone indefinitely our consideration of that bylaw or not.
Point of order?
Go ahead, Mr. Rice.
I thought it was somebody called the question, so we're voting.
Oh, we are?
Cut off the date?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely right. I'm absolutely wrong.
I'm getting you a big flask for Christmas.
A flask with what in it? You're on. But could you make it Hanukkah instead of Christmas? And I'll be
Hanukkah, sorry.
Right. Okay, so we are voting on whether to cut off discussion on that motion to postpone. And thank you for that clarification. Everybody, Ms. Cranston, you were right. I should say what we're doing and I should know it. So that's what we're doing. This will require a 2/3 vote to cut off. We're going to try it by a voice vote. If anybody disagrees, we'll have to. Right? Right. All those in favor of cutting off debate on whether or not to postpone indefinitely our consideration of Article 35, say aye. Aye. All those opposed to cutting off debate on Article 35, say nay. Does anyone disagree with my assessment that we achieved 2/3? If you disagree, raise your hand. Okay, so debate has been cut off and we're now going to go to the motion. Right, Mr. Rice? We're now going to the motion to postpone indefinitely. All those in favor of postponing indefinitely our consideration of Article 35, say aye. Aye. All those opposed to postponing indefinitely, say nay. Nay. My assessment is that the nays carry. The motion to call the question fails. Anybody disagree with my assessment and need a count?
No, the motion to postpone to indefinitely fails.
Yes.
We're talking about the thing.
Mr. Lannon.
Mr. Moderator, I move that the town act on the following citizens' petition to see if the town will vote to amend the Town of Ashfield general bylaws by adding a new section, ban on single-use plastics as provided below, the text in your warrant.
Second. Okay, do you wish to speak to that?
I'm a business owner along with my wife, not in this town. We have a business in Shelburne Falls, so on the Buckland side of Shelburne Falls. They have a similar single-use plastics ordinance in the town. It was implemented during about the time of COVID, so it wasn't really implemented. This type of bylaw has an impact on small businesses. Am I speaking to the motion or just, yeah, I'm speaking to the motion.
Me.
In Ashfield, I can think of one business for sure that it would have an impact on, that would be Neighbors. They use the type of single-use plastic that this bylaw speaks to. If you look in their cooler where they have this pre-made sandwiches and pre-made salads, those little plastic clamshells, this would require those to be changed to something compostable, recyclable. Right? At Fall Festival, this would require all the vendors at Fall Festival to use corn-based utensils, paper products, something that was compostable, etc. I don't know all the businesses in town, that's for sure, but I can't think of a whole lot of other impact on single-use plastics that this bylaw would impact. Maybe Mr. Kohler could elaborate.
Before we call it, I know Mr. Kohler can elaborate, but before this, I will tell you that the town clerk, for the minutes, and I received in writing some attempts to amend the petition. The petition appears as a petition should, in the way that it was circulated and signed. However, it can be amended. So Mr. Kohler advised me and the town clerk that he intended to offer the following. You mind if I do this? As amendments. And maybe I'm just trying to expedite it because of time. I'm not proposing the amendments, I'm telling you amendments that he intends to offer. So, if you look and you see under definitions, following the definition of reusable checkout bag and before the definition of upcycling versus recycling, insert this new definition is what Mr. Kohler proposes as an amendment. Quote, single use in bold. The term single-use plastic in this bylaw refers to goods that are made primarily from fossil fuel-based chemicals, parentheses, petrochemicals, end parentheses, and are meant to be disposed of right after a single serving use, hyphen, often in mere minutes. Common examples of single-use and single-serving plastics include food serviceware, plastic beverage straws, plastic stirrers or plastic cutlery, and single-use plastic shopping bags as described above. That's under definition for single use. Then he moves under section D entitled exemptions and alternatives to strike number 10, which reads meat and poultry packaging materials as required by the United States Department of Agriculture. He moves to strike that and replace it with the following. If I'm reading too fast, am I?
Yes.
I'll slow down. The new number 10 he proposes to amend is agriculturally based food containers and fodder, F-O-D-D-E-R, wraps, W-R-A-P-S, hyphen, includes the following: locally sourced agricultural food that is packaged in food containers for the use of food products larger than a single serving size. B, local meat and poultry packaging materials as required by the United States Department of Agriculture. C, specialty, agricultural wraps used in processing livestock fodder. These are proposed amendments which I think Mr. Kohler can now move that amendment. We can deliberate on it. Under the section C, entitled Use Regulations, so if you go to section C, entitled Use Regulations, number 7, I think it's on page 4, I noted, and I don't have it here, I think it's 4. Number 7, it shall not be a violation of this section to sell, provide, or purchase prepared food packaged in food service ware otherwise prohibited by subsections 1 through 4. If the prepared food is packaged outside the town and is sold or otherwise provided to the consumer in the same food service ware in which it is originally packaged. Businesses packaging prepared food outside the town are encouraged to use food service ware that is compostable or recyclable and is not made in whole or in part from polystyrene foam. Those are a mouthful. It's hard to remember. Is there any way to summarize, Mr. Moeller? You still intend to, Mr. Kohler, what's your name? You intend to make this motion to amend? And Mr. Cranston, I've got you. Just let's hear if he puts these amendments on so we know what we're being asked to vote on. You intend to move these? So, hang on, Mrs. Cranston. Mr. Kohler, could you come to the microphone? Do you want to briefly explain why? Is there a second to this? Okay, it's moved by Mr. Kohler, and it's seconded. Explain why you're proposing these amendments to Article 30.
Okay, the last amendment you spoke of replaces a Scrivener's error that was in another bylaw that was the model for this bylaw that had A through D, and it's just replacing the A with the number 1 through 4. That's an easy one. The two other bylaws or amendments came after the announcement of this bylaw proposal. Phone calls with some agricultural-based folks, and they were confused over the use of our previous definition of single-use plastics. Most people think of single-use plastics as foodware, just because we're conditioned that way. But also, if you have a maple syrup jug, a gallon, that is a single-use plastic because the law apparently requires that you can only use it for syrup once. You can't then fill it with gasoline and stuff like that. So there was some confusion over the word single-use, and that's why it was inserted in there that disposed of right after. It clarified the concept of what the bylaw is speaking to, foodware.
Definition.
And the third one was, even though it was exempt anyways, as in for various reasons, a lot of people were asking, and I thought it was appropriate to exempt it, were the big white single-use bale plastic that our agricultural sector sees. So that is what I call a fodder wrap, and the bylaw can be changed in the future to accommodate other stuff until the industry catches up with it.
Okay, so this is when, once again, we've been here before. Mrs. Cranston, I know you have been waiting to speak. We're speaking right now about whether we should approve those amendments.
That's correct.
Good, thank you. Please use the
I would like
microphone.
to respond to Cynthia Cranston Bellis Road. I would like to respond to the Section 10 amendments that he has proposed. I do not think there needs to be any of them included in the amendment, because Ashfield is a right to farm community. It has its own set of bylaws, and under the farming, it has farming shall encompass activities including but not limited to the following. The one that applies to packaging is processing and packaging the agricultural output of the farm. So there is no need for any farmer or anyone in this town to have to not use what they use in their agricultural practices. If you want to make an amendment or add to this, which I would add to it, is in 2006, Ashfield adopted a right to farm bylaw. No part of this bylaw shall dilute the rights afforded by Ashfield's right to farm bylaw, and any of these amendments would dilute it.
Thank you, Mrs. Cranston. Speaking to the amendment, who wishes to speak to the amendment? Mr. Cole.
David Cole, Phillips Road. Would Mr. Kohler accept a friendly amendment to strike number 10 based on this feedback?
I would.
Who seconded Mr. Kohler's motion to amend? Did you? No, I think it was Tamsin Merrill, wasn't it? It was Todd. Okay. Would you accept that friendly amendment to remove? I was It's to remove the section 10. I'm sorry, Mrs. Cranston. I handed you the amendment.
So, it's right here.
To just strike section 10.
The thing that struck me when I was listening to you speak was the Ashfield right to farm bylaw. Does that specify what kind of packaging farmers are allowed to use, or just that they're allowed to package their products?
They're allowed to package. No, it does not. And in some instances, in many instances, we do not have any alternative.
The bylaw allows for exemptions.
I understand what you're saying.
Okay, you're free. I'm happily having you come up and speak again. So you were asking Mrs. Cranston. She wanted to change that. So you as a second, Mr. Kohler said he would strike section 10 as a friendly amendment, and you as the seconder have the right to say yes or no to that. If you say no to that, then section 10 remains on the motion to amend. If you say yes, it's a friendly amendment, we'll remove section 10 from the proposed amendment.
Hey, if Mr. Kohler's happy with striking it, and Mrs. Cranston's happy with it, who am I to say?
Who are you, Mr. Atlantic? Yes. Okay, so is there any objection? Hang on. Is there any objection to striking section 10 from the proposed amendment, which I read and Mr. Kohler moved? Is there any objection to striking section 10? Hearing none, the proposed amendment does not include section 10 because the mover and seconder agreed with the friendly amendment Mrs. Cranston asked for. Yes, ma'am.
Barbara Miller, Cummington Road, and I'm the chair of the Ag Commission, and I just was catching up on what Cynthia bringing up, the right to farm bylaw, and it not specifying what that packaging is. Another section of the bylaw does say that farmers can use regularly accepted agricultural practices, which changes, as we all know. This pesticide is legal one year and it's not legal the next year. So I think that just the generality of the bylaw sort of encompasses that. I think a lot of farmers are looking for alternatives to plastic wrap, and other things, but when there isn't a good alternative, I really think that having the bylaw, the ag bylaw, right to farm bylaw in place covers a lot of the could be interpreted differently as time goes on, but so that it shouldn't be necessary, but we've already established that, so.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. But section 10 is now gone because it's not part of the amendment motion. Yes. I want to make sure everybody gets a chance to be heard, that's all.
I believe in the right to farm bylaw, and I believe in supporting our farmers 100%. But sometimes you can't see the forest for the trees. Now I'm going to tell you that the use of all plastics are supporting fossil fuel oil extraction, which get into global warming and everything else. The use of compostable alternatives supports our agricultural sector because it's made from wheat and corn derivatives. So we all know that oil companies recorded record profits. And so it's important to keep in mind that yes, we support our agriculture here in this town, but we also support agriculture globally and within the continent. And it's very important we get off of fossil fuels.
Thank you. Further discussion on the proposed amendment, which does not include section 10. Well, if nobody raises their hand and nobody has anything to say, we might do it without that motion.
Yes, I'd like to.
You did it. That's been done.
Please come and stay. I know this seems, who are you?
You've got to use the microphone.
Sorry, I didn't know I wasn't. Okay. Denise Kerman, steady labor, I've been in town for about 35 years. I want to say that this whole sort of focus is in its infancy in this country. It really is. And I think, in my opinion, because I'm not totally from here, I have other roots, and I go back frequently, I am amazed with the ingenuity that is occurring in places like Germany and England and France in terms of what people are beginning to produce as an alternative packaging. And so it is coming. I think none of us wants to make it a burden on people who don't have alternatives or where the alternatives are extremely expensive at the moment and there's no incentive to move to them. But I think we've got to have a beginning somewhere. We've got to start saying enough and, pivot the aircraft carrier, if you will, even slowly toward the direction that we all want to go in. And that isn't making life difficult for agriculture or business people, but it is understanding that we do have to change things.
Okay, so twice I got lost in what we were doing, so I certainly understand if others aren't. What we're talking about right now is not the main motion. That's the big question. We're talking about whether a two-part amendment should be allowed. One under section C, one under definitions, which adds the definition of single-use plastics to the definitions that are contained in the beginning of this proposal. And the second under section C, entitled Use Regulations, a new number 7, which I read to you earlier, and I wouldn't blame you if you can't remember what it is. I don't think we have to deal with the scrivener's error, which was A through D, which should read 1 through 7, but it's corrected in the use regulation amendment you're proposing. We're talking about whether to allow these amendments or not. So, and then we will go to the main motion. Unless we take a break and go home and get our pajamas, we'll do that. So,
Hannah Gerald, Main Street. I'd like to move to call question.
Is there a second to calling the question on Mr. Cornwell, Dr. Cornwell to do that? So who said yes? Who said yes to a second? Ron did. Okay, so we're experts on this. If you vote yes, you're cutting off debate on the proposed amendments to Article 35. If you vote no, then you want to continue debate on the amendments to Article 35, right? Right, Mr. Rice? Did I get that right? All right. So we're going to try it to see if we can tell by a voice vote. If necessary, we'll put our tellers who are getting good workout today back to work. All those in favor of cutting off debate, which will require a 2/3 majority, supermajority. All those in favor of cutting off debate, say aye. Aye. All those opposed, say nay. Nay. Okay. Anybody disagree with my assessment that debate has been cut off? No. I didn't hear that. Did somebody disagree? No. Okay. All right, so debate has been cut off, and now we're going to vote on the amendments. The amendments add the definition to the definitional portion of Article 35 of single-use plastics, and the second amendment adds Section C, use regulation. It adds a number 7. I'm just going to read it one more time. Okay? It shall not be a violation of this section to sell, provide, or purchase prepared food, packaged in food service ware, otherwise protected by subsections 1 through 4. If the prepared food is packaged outside the town and is sold or otherwise provided to the consumer in the same food service ware in which it is originally packaged, period. Businesses packaging prepared food outside the town are encouraged to use food service ware that is compostable or recyclable and is not made in whole or in part from polystyrene foam. So, any confusion about what we're about to do, what we're voting on? Yes, Ms. Sauer.
I thought there was a strike or something there, so one of the amendments. Is that? What's the number 10 or something?
Yeah, Section 10 has been eliminated.
That's eliminated, that's wrong.
That's eliminated. The request for a friendly amendment, both the mover and the seconder agreed to the friendly amendment to remove Section 10 based on objections that were being made.
Okay, so that's
right? I said that. I said 1 through 4. So you may see A through D in section. It's not A through D. It's now reads 1 through 4 by this amendment, right? Yeah, that's done. All those in favor of the amendment say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay. All those abstaining? It passes unanimously.
Oh, God.
Okay. So, now we're on the main motion, right? Any discussion on the main vote, Mr. Liston?
So sorry. No.
Paul Simsky, John Ford Road. So, my wife and I own Side Hill Farm Yogurt. We're responsible for maybe 500,000 plastic containers a year. To give you some perspective, it's our least favorite part by a factor of 1,000 or 1,000,000 maybe of everything that we do. And we are actually working very hard on alternatives. And we are meeting a lot of resistance from the powers that be at the FDA, etc. And one of the reasons is that there aren't enough examples out there yet. Everybody's very conservative in that world. Nobody wants to take a risk. And so we need some people to start to be out front so that the people who are in charge of these things can see that it's a priority for people. So I would say this is imperfect, but it's workable and there are exceptions. So I would strongly recommend people vote for it. There's a really big patch of plastic in the Pacific, and I don't like thinking I'm a part of that. And I don't imagine other people do either. So we have to start somewhere, that's what I say.
No. One more time. If you applaud somebody who disagrees, might be daunted and might not talk. So we don't do that.
No, I was actually jumped up. Cynthia,
I said,
you go.
thank you.
Mr. Kohler, I'd like to hear as many voices as possible, Mr. Kohler. Please.
Cynthia Cranston, Dulles Road. The first purpose of my...
Speak into the microphone, please.
The first purpose of my opposition to this article is that no communication or research has been done on the impact it will have, if any, on Ashfield's mom and pop stores, the kids market, Ashfield Fall Festival, and other town functions. Nor has anyone addressed how it might affect future mom and pop stores. The second purpose of my opposition is the unintentional consequences this bylaw might have. Congress has not passed a forever chemicals and food packaging regulation, but 11 states, not including Massachusetts, have. The language used by these states is least toxic alternative, because the issue of toxicology is regrettable substitutions. A recent Canadian study conducted at the University of Toronto revealed that of the 42 different types of food packaging they tested, they found forever chemicals in 55% of the samples. 8 of these samples found that molded paper bowls, often advertised as compostable, had the highest levels of the forever chemicals, which they're used as a repellent for grease, oil, and water. Also cited in my research is the need for certain compostable silverware to be composted in a commercial composting facility. Is there such a facility at Ashfield's disposal? I believe there are too many unanswered questions at this time to vote on this amendment. We need a committee or someone to further investigate. I know that there's global warming. I know what Paul is saying. We need some alternatives, but we aren't there yet.
Thank you, Mr. Cranston. Mr. Kohler.
There is never a convenient time. This is not an easy transition, but it is an extremely necessary thing to do. There's now nanopolymers in inaccessible parts of the earth that cause cancer because of incineration of plastic. 95% of all plastic produced does not even end up in a recycle bin. I, personally, with my partner Nina, when we carry our spoons with us, and we carry our cups with us, it's best not to use anything that you're going to throw away. And yes, if you go to Martin's Farm, you'll see their grinder, and they do a lot of business for flatware and stuff like that. And if it's ASTM 6400 regulated and certified, you don't see the dioxins that you would see in all the green paperware and different things. That they have to do it right. Now, the thing I want to say about this is a lot of moving parts in this bylaw. And this bylaw came from two places. It came from Buckland, and it came from Hadley with Route 9. And they are dealing with it. And how do they deal with it? It's very important you know this. First of all, their date of the start of their bylaw was January of this year, and our proposed one is January 2024. So you got 6 months right there to kind of think about it. And then you go to the health board and you request a deferment. And Hadley, if you look at their records, they have granted 100% of the deferments for up to a year for folks to use up old stock and stuff. Well, guess what? That half year and a year allows us time to come back to this town meeting and amend this even further, because we will have been thinking about it for so long. So I encourage you to pass this bylaw, relax. I am available to anyone out there. And as far as talking to businesses, talk to Country Pie. I've talked to Nancy and Laura. I've extended an invitation to neighbors. I have spoken to a lot of different people that put out products here. And, I'm sorry? The Porter Family Farm. And I encourage you, Cynthia, to come to one of our sessions. We had 3 one-hour sessions for people to help form the bylaw. And the Porter Family Farm did actually get wording into the bylaw because I hadn't thought of some stuff. So that's where it is. We've got to start moving. I encourage you to vote for this.
Okay, let's keep private conversations to a minute. Yes?
Sage Fernetovich, South Street. I'd like to call the question and vote on this.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Dr. Porter, second. I know you don't know this, but this is non-debatable, non-amendable, requires a 2/3 majority. I'm not going to decide whether it's a 2/3 majority unless we all agree. And we're going to do it first by a voice vote and see if we can get by without holding up our hands or a paper ballot or some other method. So, the motion is to cut off debate on whether or not to approve Article 35 as amended, seeking a single-use plastic bylaw for the town of Ashfield. If you vote yes, you will be voting to cut off discussion and go to the motion and vote on it. If you vote no, you are voting to continue the conversation on whether or not we should vote yes for that Article 35. Everybody clear what we're voting for?
Yes. And it happens to be the last article of the day.
What's that got to do with it? I'm enjoying, I love being with you people. All those in favor of whiskey for the moderator say aye. All those in favor of cutting off debate on Article 35 say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay.
Hey, just for the fun of it.
That's a loud nay. I think the ayes have it by more than 2/3. Does anyone disagree with my assessment?
Staying.
I honestly couldn't tell because
You're too loud?
Todd was speaking and I couldn't hear.
All those in favor of cutting off debate, say aye. Aye. All those opposed, say nay.
Nay.
Anybody disagree with my assessment that the ayes have it by more than 2/3?
I would say the ayes no, but it's okay.
All right. Seriously, do you disagree with my assessment that the ayes have it? Okay, then we don't have to talk any further, right? Okay, debate is cut off. We're going to vote on the main motion. Does anybody need for me to refresh our memory on what the amendments that we passed are? No. All those in favor of Article 35 on single-use plastic as amended. Say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say nay.
Nay.
All those abstaining?
Abstain.
Okay. I think the ayes have it, requires a simple majority. Does anyone disagree with my assessment?
No.
The ayes have it, Article 35 passes. Can I just say, you guys are incredible. We live in an incredible town. Thank you so much for hanging in here with us. There's a motion to adjourn. Is there a second? All in favor, say aye.